I am so excited to be introducing one of my first ECHO inspirations, Kristen Soul. Just real quick, show of hands, who has met Kristen? Who knows her? Okay, so you already know. For the folks who do not know or have not had the pleasure of meeting her, Kristen is one of the most genuine, caring, loving, and welcoming human beings I think I've ever met. And I felt her energy from the audience while she was up here presenting. In person, she's even more electric. So I am just thrilled to extend out to you all a chance to meet Kristen Soul and the panelists as we go over ECHO Autism in the communities. Let's welcome them.
Wow, that's a lot to live up to. So thank you so much for being here. I'm Kristen Soul. I'm a pediatrician. I specialize in development and behavior. And we're here today to talk about autism. But I think it's more than autism. So for those of you who are wanting to hear all about autism, you probably will. But it's really about communities, and it's about systems, and it's about thinking through how do we build systems that make our communities stronger. And so the story begins really a long time ago, really when I started practicing medicine and serving individuals on the autism spectrum. I recognized how many people were having to drive hours and hours to get to the care that they needed. And it was really my colleagues at the Missouri Telehealth Network who introduced me to ECHO. And they said, we know you're doing all these outreach issues and events out in the community. We think ECHO might be a way to amplify that. And so in 2014, I got to come here with the Missouri Telehealth Network and get to know the ECHO model. And so you're going to hear a little bit about how we're using that ECHO model, not only in the space around primary care, which is where we've done a ton of our innovation, but also in thinking about systems. How do we as professionals do better for our communities? And so I think it truly is about that partnership of saying, yes, I have a lot of expertise about autism, but you know what? All of my colleagues, whether it's a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, teachers in the community, school nurses, pediatricians, we all need to do better. One of the things you may not realize about autism is that it's on the rise. And so if you listen to the news any day, you might hear news numbers. And so what we know now is it's about 2% of the population. We used to think it was fairly rare. It's not. And we're learning every day about more and more aspects of what autism and autistic people can teach us and show us. And yet there's still this chasm of misinformation out there that, oh, sorry, you have autism, I can't see you as your general dentist. I don't know anything about autism. And I'm like, they're a human being that needs to have their teeth looked after. Or they're a human being that needs to have the exact same preventative care that everyone else does. So we're going to be talking about the impact, voices of impact in ECHO Autism communities. Now, we are a small representation of ECHO Autism communities. We are so proud of the teams all around the world that are learning the model very effectively and then using that to reach and to expand autism best practices no matter where we are. And so that includes teams all across every continent except Antarctica, although I have taken that as a potential challenge. And certainly we are so excited to talk to you more about what we do. So first, I'm going to ask my panelists to talk a little bit about who they are and what brings them to this panel. And we're going to start with Alicia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia Brewer-Curran. I am one of the associate directors of ECHO Autism Communities. I'm also the CDC's Act Early Ambassador for the state of Missouri. But my most important job and what makes me passionate about both things that I do is that I'm a mom of a 23-year-old son with autism spectrum disorder. And, I've lived the barriers that Kristen talks about, and it's just really not only fulfills my professional goals in this work with ECHO Autism Communities and ECHO at large, but really those personal goals as well. So it's really great to be here. Thanks, Kristen.
Thanks. Ramiro, I'm going to come to you next, and then Chris.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Ramiro Mitre. I am a clinical psychologist from Argentina. I am also a program and training coordinator for ECHO Autism Communities at the University of Missouri. And I am also the executive director of the Neurodiversity Foundation in Argentina and leader of the ECHO Autismo Neurodiversidad program.
Excellent. Thanks, Ramiro. Okay, Chris.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kristalina Oberweiser, and I am a collector of Converse and college degrees. I also am a project manager for Echo Autism Communities. When I met Kristen, I was an 8th grade math teacher who was using my doctorate in developmental psychology to trick adolescents into learning math. It can be done. It's hard. That's my CV stuff, but my real who am I? I'm a wife. I'm a friend, I'm a coworker, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister. I am an interconnected citizen of the world, and I do this through the lens of deficits in social reciprocity, communication, and emotional regulation. I'm an adult human. I'm an adult human with autism, or an autistic human, as I prefer to say it.
I love that. Thanks, Chris. All right, so as we think about this and we think about the work that we do through ECHO, you can imagine that we've had a lot of opportunities to explore so many perspectives. And so what I want to talk about now is from your perspective, and we're going to start with Chris, what is the biggest gap that you see related to autism and developmental disabilities right now?
I see two, and they're connected, so I'll be able to get them in my 2 minutes that she gave me. First, we don't understand a lot about autism in people who are assigned female at birth, which I'll use AFAB from now on. If I asked you to close your eyes and picture an autistic person, it would be a boy, they would like trains, and there would be a child. And all of our testing, all of our diagnostics, all of our screeners, and most of our treatments were normed on white boys. Well, that's not the entire autistic population, friends. And my autism looks very different than the autism of a man, even if we have similar support needs. I touched on the other a little bit, which is everybody thinks that autistics are kids, and we do start out that way. We were born this way. But a very conservative estimate of the number of autistics who are turning 18 every year through Autism by the Numbers is 70,000 a year. And I'll tell you that I've read other studies that are more up to date, and that number is usually much, much higher. We need more supports in college and career readiness. Clinicians who treat grown-up conditions need more support in learning how to treat and interact with us when we show up in your offices. And the oldest autistics are in their 70s. And that means that those organizations that offer support to our aging population, like nursing homes, really need training and support on how to handle us, because, friends, we're coming for you.
Thanks, Chris. That's excellent. All right, Ramiro, what would you add? What do you see from your perspective?
Well, all that Chris just said, plus things can get pretty hard in developing countries. You know, when you face structural poverty, when you, just to give you an example, in Argentina, where I live and I'm a proud citizen of that country, we face 50% of the population below the poverty line. 60% of children are below the poverty line. So for parents, when you think about autism, I mean, it's really not a priority when you don't know if you're going to be able to feed your children the next day. So these challenges make things even better, even bigger, even worse. And autism being such a complex condition, it's also another thing that really makes things harder, because you need speech-language pathologists because autism affects communication. You need OTs because autism affects sensory processing. You need psychologists, you need behavioral therapists because it affects behavior. So all of this it makes things so much worse. And our healthcare public systems are not prepared for this. So that's another important issue. And as part of the minimum data set that we built on the ECHO Autism communities, and I want to give a big shout out to Dr. Valerian Anclares Nogues. She's doing a terrific job in terms of global reach. So we developed kind of a measure to assess all programs accordingly. And one of the things, we will probably tell you more about the results on the next MetaECHO because we are still working on it. But one of the things that we've discovered is that professionals tell us that the main barriers they face in terms of autism healthcare is access to training. They don't get many opportunities to get trained. The costs that are associated with those trainings are very expensive, more facing recurrent economic crisis and all that things. And also they told us that autism is not part of academia. You don't get trained on university programs, and that makes everything so much worse. So that's why the ECHO model is great for this.
Thank you, Ramiro. Okay, Alicia, what's the biggest gap you see from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of information out in the world about autism, much more than there was in 2003 when my son was diagnosed. But with that information is a lot of misinformation about what autism truly is, and then also the evidence-based treatments and best practices. Those of you that know me in the room know that I'm very curious. I love to know all the things. I love to be in control and manage a path that, you know, when I started this journey, I didn't have a way to manage that because I didn't know anything about autism. I didn't know anything about best practices, and I had to navigate that. And I'm not the only mother that feels that way. So, you know, I think that is a huge, huge gap, is that disseminating that best practice information, which you know, why I love what I do, because that is exactly what we do. But then it kind of goes to a different level, whereas if you have information, the support systems of care in community, education, healthcare, they're very complex. So for a well-resourced woman that works in the field, it is tough for me to navigate. So it's extremely tough for families to navigate. And to be quite frank, the perception from clinicians is oftentimes, you know, they don't know how to navigate it either. And we have wonderful support systems across our country. Could they be improved? Sure, because everything can be improved. But they don't always work for the very, very unique needs of, say, my son, who has profound autism and many co-occurring psychiatric and medical conditions. So I see that. So I think, you know, at the end of the day, that, you know, that unknown zone, when we as parents don't have answers to our questions, it's scary. That was my journey. But I'd venture to say that that's probably for every one of us in the room, not just associated with autism. When we don't know things, it's a little more difficult to, you know, to navigate, and it's more challenging. So I think that lack of, you know, trusted information, we just need a source of truth. And then how we can all learn from one another to navigate those systems. Those are really big challenges that I see in the world today.
Great, thanks, Alicia, I appreciate that. And so, you know, I think for those of you, again, who are in the audience who maybe do have a deep understanding of disabilities or autism or what have you, great. These are probably things that you have thought about or considered. But if you don't have a lot of understanding about disabilities, I encourage you to really listen to the words that we're saying. One of the things that we are really passionate about at ECHO Autism Communities is creating communities where all people can be seen for the abilities that they have and that they can live their best lives. That takes a collective societal change to be able to understand disabilities in a much deeper way than we currently do. So the stigma that goes hand in hand with many of the issues that we talk about through ECHO, whether it's mental health stigma, whether it's really significant infectious diseases, things like that, those are huge. But I will encourage us to think broadly. Disabilities are probably the number one cause of stigmatizing practices in the world, and that's writ large. So disabilities, physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities, you name it, and yet it's often the most poorly understood, the most overlooked. And so one of the things that we are very passionate about at Echo Autism is saying, and yes, it is called Echo Autism, but it's because it's not as cool to say Echo Autism and all the other developmental, psychiatric, physical disabilities. It just doesn't roll off the tongue quite so greatly. And so when we're thinking about this, though, we are thinking about that broad community. And each and every one of us has a role to play in thinking about how we can change the way people see others with disabilities. And sometimes you can't see it, right? There are many of us who have disabilities, whether that's learning disabilities, whether that's a physical disability, and yet it impacts how we intersect with our society. So at Echo Autism Communities, we are really passionate about using the model and using it very consistently across all of our organizations and all of the teams that are using the model. But we are strategically thinking about how can we change the needle on stigma and really change the paradigm so that, 5 years, 10 years, hopefully not a whole lot longer years than that, we see a change in the way that people are perceived in their communities and how they can also give back to that community. So one of the things we talk about, obviously, all of us care very deeply about disabilities, and we're very passionate about the ECHO model and in that all teach, all learn spirit, if you will. So I want to talk now about what do you find is the most important thing that you learn about being a part of an Echo Autism program. And we're going to start with Alicia.
Well, I'm sure you're all expecting the standard answer. It's made me a better person. It's made me a better mother because I've learned, from different perspectives, and that's all true. But it goes so much deeper than that. I feel that, the interdisciplinary nature and the multiple perspectives, and that it really, truly, that's why I love ECHO so much. It really, truly is all teach, all learn. There is not one session of one program that I've ever gone to as a participant or content expert or just an observer that I haven't learned something. And I think that for me, not only does it truly make me a better person and mother, because, our perspectives and opinions are really based upon our experiences, and it broadens the horizons of my experiences listening to everyone. But then at the professional level, I'm a content expert on several hub teams. It makes me a better content expert. It makes me a better advocate for my own son, clinicians, educators, community supports. It makes me a better advocate for all those things because I listened to those perspectives. They're just not mine, but I can integrate those perspectives on the way my perspective, and it really shapes how I see things. Also, I train. We're a super hub. Echo Autism Communities is a super hub, and we train. We do partner launch trainings, and it makes me a better trainer. So really, the all teach, all learn of our programs, again, the cliche, it makes me a better person. It really does, but not just in one way, in multiple. And I think that is the greatest impact that I can think about, that I think it does for many of us. I think many of you would agree about having the same experience.
Awesome. Thanks, Alicia. All right, Ramiro?
I'm going to answer this question by inviting all of you to visit our poster. It's number 80, and we are actually asking you what do you gain from being a hub team member. So that's something that we really want to know. And plus, you get Argentinian candy, so come and join us. Well, I can tell you about two things that I learned. One of them, and of course, it's the power of collaboration. It's how much knowledge sharing can, as Alicia said, make you a better person, a better professional. And you can get so much knowledge about autism, but it's not until you're with your community, until you hear and you really listen what they need, that you truly understand those needs. And that's something that will never cease to amaze me, and that's why I love the ECHO model. And also another thing I learned is that Latin American people are so well-driven. They have a passion for helping other people. Fun fact, most Latin American sites are working pro bono. They don't even cover expenses. They just do it on their own free times, mostly at night. And we do it because we know that it's the only way that professionals can get trained. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the information they need, and what's worse, people won't have the services they need. So, if you see any echo autism session, you will see that in Latin America, you will see that they are so crowded. We are averaging 80 people every session. Some groups are crowded than others, but yeah. So that's another thing I learned, and I really hope we can get more sites on board.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, Chris?
It seems like I've learned two things is the theme of the day, so we'll go with it. Being able to get other people's thoughts and perceptions and what's going on inside their head is really fascinating to me and eye-opening. My favorite part of the ECHO model, of every single clinic that I'm a part of, and I'm on 3 hub teams, so I go to several ECHOs, is when the participants ask their clarifying questions. Because I've read the case and I've listened to the person who is presenting, and I am sitting there and I have what I think is going on through the lens of 1, hey, that could be me. 2, through the lens of developmental psychology, like, okay, cool. And 3, through the lens of someone with the disability of a legal education. And then they start asking questions. And I'm like, did you hear the same thing that I heard? Wow, like, that's so amazing. And my eyes are open to every clinic. I learn so much about humans and people and people who seriously care about helping autistic people. The other thing is profound maybe just to me, but I'm going to share it with you nice people. To understand it, I'll go quick, but I have to back up. I spoke my first word when I was 4. I didn't use expressive language until I was 6, and you'll be happy to know I stopped licking people at 9. So my whole life, because this world is prickly and I don't fit, I have been told that it is better if I would just be quiet. And every clinic and every time that I speak through either my own company, Human Differently, or Kristen has me speak, I find out that there are people in the world who not only want to improve the lives of autistic people all over, they care about what autistic people have to say. And that, for me, is the biggest thing that I've learned, because I spent a lot of years thinking that it would be better if I just sat down and shut up.
Thanks, that's really powerful. And I can tell you, she steals the show on most of the echoes, which is amazing. And honestly, really profound. So I know that may sound silly, but honestly, I'm not autistic. And when I'm teaching, yes, I know a lot about autism. And I listen to a lot of autistic people, but I'm still not autistic. And so the thing is that's so beautiful about how we have so purposefully integrated the lived experience, whether that's the caregiver's lived experience or the autistic self-advocate's lived experience. We are so intentional about making sure that every voice is equal. So just because I'm quote unquote Kristen Soul, my voice does not outweigh anyone else's. At least that's really the heart of what we try to do, is equally normalize those voices, because every voice matters. And so when we're thinking about those eco-autism communities, and I'm answering my own question now, so when I think about what is the most important part that we're doing, I think about those interconnections and those purposeful, systematic strategies to build communities. So we call ourselves eco-autism communities, and that's because we are intentionally building communities of professionals, not just who participate in ECHO, but who can now be leaders and advocates in their communities, so that they are now informed and they have clear understanding about the issues facing the autistic community, understand much better policy and strategy and advocacy. Again, it doesn't mean that our echoes about early intervention are going to have a whole ton of stuff about policy, but at the same time, when you have more information and you better understand the landscape with which autistic or disability-specific policy is taking place in your communities, you are a stronger community. And so it's been so powerful. You know, obviously we're in Missouri, and Missouri has tons and tons of eco-autisms going on. We have about 11 different types of professionals that we have Eco-Autism's for, but there are many, many, many more that can be built because frankly, every one of us has an opportunity to learn more about autism or disabilities or all of the things that go hand in hand with being on the spectrum or living in a community that's diverse. One of the things that I think is really, really important to understand is I would beg to question what exactly it means to think normally. Now, I don't think normally, so I am not quote unquote neurotypical. I am not autistic, but neurodiversity is beautiful. And the crazy ability for all of us to think in so many ways and in so many passionate directions is amazing. And so one of the things we do with Eco-Autism is embrace how we all think differently. It's not always easy because when you all think differently, it can sometimes be hard to row that ship, but at the same time, so important for us to think about the beauty with which neurodiversity brings to the table. So I know we only have about 10 minutes left, but I want to spend this last 10 minutes thinking ahead to the future, thinking ahead to where we're headed. I'm going to kind of preface this question with, when we started 8.5 years ago, I never in my wildest dreams imagined what we would be accomplishing globally with Eco-Autism. I never in my wildest dreams imagined we would have programs on every continent thinking about how to escalate and share autism best practices so that people on the spectrum could have equitable access to autism best practices across so many different walks of life: education, healthcare, acute healthcare, primary healthcare, caregivers, advocates, on and on and on, mental health. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that. And that's because of ECHO. Project ECHO and that model is so incredibly powerful. So when I think about where we've been and I think about where we're headed, what I want you guys to each kind of think through is, where do you hope we go in the next 3 to 5 years? And we being the global construct around Eco-Autism communities, or I'll even let you think about giant society at large. So let's start with you, Chris, first, and we'll go down the line.
I hope that we expand, and we have quite a bit, but I hope that Eco-Autism expands with the growing autistic population. So I have delusions of one day running or being involved with an Eco-Autism higher ed because autistic kids go to college and they drop out, if they even go. 50% of us are at 23 years old are still living at home and haven't worked or gone to college yet. We need supports. College people, like college disability services professors. My husband's an accounting professor, and he doesn't know what to do with diverse people who are in his class because they didn't. I'm a K-12 background person, and I'm like, you just teach them. And he's like, yeah, that's harder than you think. So I would like us to better support colleges, universities, higher ed, workplace. I would love for us to support HR and other workplace initiatives to help support the people who want to work and can do an amazing job if we're given the supports that we need to be successful. Kristen and I got to go to Copenhagen and see a little bit of that in action, and I was just like, why can't we do that here? And then I would love for clinicians to get better support and training on treating autistic adults. I'm 42 and I'm doing great, but they tell me 10 years from now or so, menopause is a thing, and it's not even looked at for the normies. And here I come with weird sensitivities. This is not going to be okay, friends. And then support for the aging population. My parents, my dad would probably be what we used to be called Asperger, and if and when he needs nursing support, that is going to be interesting. I mean, the oldest, we diagnosed autism in the 40s to start with. So even though we've existed for the entirety of humankind, we've known about it since the 40s. And that means that there are a lot of really older autistic people. And I want us to get the best care possible. And I don't always get good care when I interact with the medical community. And I want us to be able to do better, and I would love to be able to help as we're talking to people and doing that.
Chris, Ramiro?
Well, I hope we continue to do the same thing we do every night, Pinky, try to take over the world. And maybe not in the same way as PK on the brains, but I certainly do hope that Project ECHO continues to grow, and particularly the eco-autism communities. Well, you know, I'm just going to throw some data. The first team to start their eco-autismo program in Latin America was 2015. By the beginning of last year, we had 6 teams working, and as we are talking right now, we have 20 teams all over Latin America. And these numbers are great, but they are only a band-aid on a fracture. So we still need many more people involved. We need administrations involved. We need organizations involved, and I think that's up to each of us. And that. I don't know what the future holds, but one thing I do know for sure, and it's that what we do matter, what you all do matter. So I really hope it continues to grow, and I think we are on the good track. It's not enough, but we are thriving.
Thanks, Ramiro. Okay, Alicia.
So when my son was diagnosed, got his autism diagnosis, I didn't see it coming. And it was quite devastating, not really because, he was any different. He was who he was, and I love him. But because it was that unknown path that I spoke about earlier, it was also because I had a lot of questions and I had no one to answer those questions. I had no one to guide and direct me in the path that I literally didn't have any type of GPS or paper map for. It was really difficult. And I remember finally when I kind of got myself together, it took a year and a half to get from that initial very, very dark place. And I remembered thinking, gosh, in life, I want to do something where I can make a difference and get information to people so no one ever has to go through what I went through, because it was awful. Thankfully, Kristen hired me, and I have that opportunity to do this every single day. When we started in 2015, I was so excited about being able to get families, to get clinicians up to speed and, best care for families across Missouri. And it was just the proudest moment. The proudest moment of my professional career is when Kristen asked me to be on the hub team, not because I had an education background, but for my lived experience. I was a mom, and we were the first ECHO program that integrated the voice of lived experience, whether it be an autistic person or a mother of a child with autism. And that is a great, great honor that I will, take with me until I take my last breath. And so I was so excited because it gave me that opportunity. And then we launched a randomized controlled trial in 2016, and we had Canada and the United States. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so wonderful. It's across North America. This is so much more than I ever imagined. And then we took off. And we went from country to country to country to city to country. And now I'm with Kristen, I'm all about getting those folks on Antarctica. I want to be all over the world. And so although I never expected it when, we were first planning and planning our primary care program with the Missouri Telehealth Network, I never expected we'd be here. But oh my goodness, so fulfilling. Because my thoughts as that mom that just came from a really dark place, parents they don't need answers today. They needed them yesterday. We've got to get this information out. We've got to do better. It's actually coming true, and it's because of our program, which makes me just elated. I know early on, Kristen and I would, really, we would tell people we're out to change the world, and they thought we were joking or, the kind of standard cliche term. No, it was true. We're very, very passionate that way. And ECHO has allowed us to really, really achieve, we're not there yet, but with partners, it has just done something more amazing than I could ever imagine. So if you ask me where we want to be in 3 to 5 years, I want ECHO Autism Communities to be a household name, not to amplify us at all, but because if it's a household name, then those families and autistic people are getting answers yesterday. They're not getting them today.
Thanks, Alicia. And so I'll round us out just by saying, first of all, thank you for being up here. I know that being on a stage is not everybody's favorite thing to do, but I'm with Carissa. I also like it. And one of the things that I think is so important for us to remember is that you have the power to do a lot of things. You have the power and the ability to do so many things. So I want you to think about that every single day. What can I do to make a difference? Now, we focus a lot on autism and disabilities, but you all have an opportunity to focus on whatever you want to focus on. And so when you think about that, think about what you can do. The world is going to tell you a lot, that you can't do that, that doesn't make sense, don't bother with that, that's going to take too long, the return on investment, blah, blah, blah. The bottom line is you can do something. It does not mean you have to do some Herculean effort to make a difference. But the small things that you do, and I know I'm speaking to so many of the people who already believe in this can-do attitude, but I want to remind you of the power that you have, and the use of the ECHO model is such an incredible opportunity. So what I hope to see is when I come back here at the next MetaECHO, that we have continued to grow and escalate those equitable autism best practices and disabilities best practices, so that more and more voices of autistic people and their loved ones are amplified to equal status, and that we are ideally taking it to policymakers and really making a huge difference all around the world. So thank you for your time. I know you have lunch coming, and I'm going to turn it back over to Carissa.
Incredible work.